Dick, I was telling you a story a few moments ago about a time several decades in my past when I got the chance to do several of the parachute test drops for BRS with the early Cessna 150 test bed that they used to prove the concept. First a mortar-fired system and then a rocket-fired system down the line and different sliders and different this. And I was always flying along with this amazing guy by the name of Gary DeReese, parachute rigger extraordinaire. Just a brilliant mind for anything having to do with chutes. And we were coming back from a test that didn't come off so well. And we were somewhat mollified by the fact that someday in the future we were going to hear amazing stories about how people use this technology to save their lives and to go out and do great things with their lives thereafter. And all the frustrations and all the craziness was going to make that totally cool someday. And you're one of those guys.
I am. I had occasion to use that chute January 7th of 2012, and my daughter Elaine and I were flying down to Haiti out of Miami after some maintenance was done, and maybe too soon, but the mechanic had flown it an hour. I had flown it an hour. We looked and everything looked dry and looked fine. An interesting day. You know, Elaine had not been to Haiti before, and I had told her, well, listen, honey, I'm going to have to work on this plane and look it over before I, accept it back into service. And so go over to Target and get a camera, because you're going to see some things in Haiti you really never saw. And so she called while I was going through the things and said, well, I can't find a camera. I just got one of these little throwaway cameras, that wrap up in a little bag, and you give them away to the developer, and you never see them again after that. And I said, all right, let's go run across to Target or someplace and get a real camera. You can spend $100 or so and get something, because there's going to be a lot of pictures. She did so and then came back, and she was having a great time reading through the manual, had her feet up on the dashboard and was having a pretty good time. And we were flying, we were just getting to the part of the Bahamas that is so spectacular. And the oil pressure which is 50 in that plane. It's a beautiful plane. It always runs the same, and it was 50, and now it was actually 40, which is normal, but just not normal for this. And I thought, I don't know what that means. I'm going to turn over to Andros. And so I called Miami and said, listen, I'm going to make a left here and go to Andros, and we're going to land and see what this is. It's probably just a sensor. Sometimes these sensors, they're not so great. And then it was 38 or 35 or 30, and then I declared an emergency because I think this is, whatever it is, it's getting worse. And I was 60 miles from Bimini and 60 miles from Andros, and that was a long way from everywhere. And well, we were still cruising along doing fine, and the EGTs and CHTs were fine. And so I thought it was still maybe a sensor problem, but it was 20, and then it was 10, and then it got really red. And when those things get red, you really feel different. It makes you feel completely alarmed and unsettled. And then it, went to 0, and then the engine seized, and then I realized we're not going to make it. But I had, best glide speed was established, and I was headed for the nearest land, and everything was sort of orderly. I'd been through some punch lists, and nothing was going to work, and I realized we were going into the water now because the prop was still. Miami, if you declare an emergency, as anyone, they said, well, say intentions. I said, well, I'm going to go to Andros if I can, and if I can't, I'm going to get down to about 2,000 feet, and I'm going to pull the chute. And they said, oh, you have a parachute, do you? And I think it was then I realized, yeah, I do have a parachute. I was thankful to have it. Had thought, I'd been making that flight for a couple of years by then, and I'd read all the ditching literature, and I believed you should be wearing, and we were wearing little wraparound life jackets, and I think you should have a raft, and we had a raft in the back seat, and I think you need a PLB, and I had one on my raft. Supposed to have it on your belt, I later learned, but we had one. We were not unprepared. The idea of ditching and versus flying until you can't fly anymore and then pulling the chute had been a matter on Copa, our famous website for food fights. We'd had a lot of these discussions, and it wasn't certain in a Cirrus whether water is a good place to land. I had looked at the ditching literature, and it looked to me like maybe 80–90% of the people who ditch don't have any trouble at all. 10 or 15%, some of them flip. And the fixed gear guys, at least there's a theory that fixed gear guys flip. You hit the water going 60 knots or so if you're just at stall speed. I wasn't 100% confident I would get that right, but that wasn't the issue. I had made this decision a couple of years ago. I thought, I think 100% of people who pull the chute within proper parameters survive.
Redbird Flight Simulations is dedicated to revolutionizing flight training by designing, manufacturing, and delivering affordable and innovative flight training technologies. Each Redbird device is designed to enhance the training experience for pilots of all levels, from student to ATP. Redbird is quickly becoming the industry standard for flight training. Since Redbird introduced its revolutionary FMX in 2007, colleges, universities, and flight training operations around the world have integrated Redbird products into their curriculum. It's time to discover what Redbird can do for you. Join the migration.
So I was not going to fly this directly under the crash. I was willing to give up that control for the last 2,000 feet. I did pick 2,000 feet as a hard deck because I thought maybe it won't work. And if it doesn't work, then I'm going to ditch, and 2,000 feet will give me enough time to get that sorted out. It worked great. And I didn't bother to try and get it down to stall speed, which I understand some people think is good. But I was doing fine, and I didn't want to start messing something up. So 90 was good. I pulled the chute there, and boy, that really stops you hard. Over a second or two, you really go to nothing. And then you look down, and I by now I had Elaine fully versed, cinched down, and everything's going to be fine, and just really, really tight now, seat upright, cross your arms. And we're going to stop suddenly. Okay. Then we're going to look down. And so we were looking down, and all you see is that gorgeous Bahamas water. It's so pretty. And I said, don't worry, Elaine. See, I know this part. We're supposed to look at this. And then the risers ripped out of the fuselage. And if you don't have an engine, it's very quiet. The ripping actually sounded like everything was being torn asunder. Oh, I don't think this is good. But then suddenly, there we are, right, and we're good. And at 2,000 feet, and then we sort of gently rotate about 3 degrees nose down, and say goodbye to Miami. I'm having a great time. I'm forgetting everything else on the rest of the checklists. I don't turn the plane off. I don't go through quite a few things wrong. Anyhow, we got all that stuff done. Everything was very fine, and then that water came up very fast. Lots and lots of water came in through the vents. Mm-hmm. Maybe a gallon in each lap. I thought, I thought we were supposed to get 3 minutes. I thought we were going under right away. I said, don't worry, honey. I have a raft, which I got out and stood on the wing. I was being a dad. I was pulling the sled again and yanked the thing, and it blows up. Perfect. Here, honey, just hop in, and we both hop in, and it takes about 5 minutes. I think, this raft is a little skimpy. It's kind of I thought it was supposed to be a 4-man raft. I thought it was supposed to have a canopy. I don't know what this cartridge is doing here either. I inflated it upside down, and we were sitting in a raft upside down. And then, by and by, what floats out? That little camera wrapped in foil. Her camera's destroyed, my camera's, computers, everything's destroyed. I said, hon, I think we can have some fun. Because really, from the minute we got into the raft, we were starting to laugh. It's just this adrenaline, so whoa, it's as good as you can feel. And I thought, honey, I think, well, let's take some pictures. So we were sort of sitting in a raft, taking pictures of each other, and let's get the plane in the background. That'll be great. And we got a bunch of pictures. It was not a difficult stretch. Half an hour, 45 minutes later, a big fixed-wing Coast Guard plane came and circled. And they circled for as long as they could. And then I think they were low on fuel, and they flew off. But by then I knew they have us pegged. They know where we are. And pretty soon you hear wop, 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 wop. And they flew in. They drop Chris Engel into the water, and I see him swimming. I think, boy, he's got to be 100 yards away. He's swimming so slowly. Here he was. Man, that guy can eat up some water. And he props his arms up and says, so how are you two doing so far today? He's not short of breath. He says, you can't bring anything with you. And I said, can I bring just this backpack? I'll keep it really close. And I wrap up the camera in the backpack and keep it dry. And he puts Elaine in the basket. Up they go, and comes back for me, does the same. And they flew us to Nassau, and we were sort of wet and didn't know what to do. And they got hold of my wife. They got hold of my family. They're just completely responsible people. I'm such a fan. They were great.
Rebuilding the sport aviation world one aviator at a time. That's A&N's new Aero Sports ebook series, your resource guide to the ultimate in aviation adventures. Aero Sport will feature the straight skinny on learning and enjoying 16 unique aviation sports, from ultralights and ballooning to aerobatics, gyroplanes and hang gliders to parachuting, home builds and general aviation to RC models. All this and more will be coming soon with the new updatable Aero Sport guide for your favorite electronic devices. Get your advance order in now at www.aero-sport.net.
This is what happens. There's an accident chain, and that's not a mistake. Chute pulling, that's an accident. Well, you got maintenance done. Then you flew out over water. What are you doing? You're flying a single-engine piston out over water. What are you doing? You're flying your daughter in a post-maintenance plane over water. Right. I took some risks. I still take them, but actually, my daughter's a little less likely to take them with me. But at any rate, you doubt yourself after a wreck. You wonder, what should I have done, and what kind of a person would do that? And there are a lot of people who will help you with those doubts. They'll say, well, you are an idiot, and you shouldn't be flying plastic planes over the water in the Bahamas. You deserve to crash. A lot of people had an idea, and one of them was like, I think the chute's an okay thing for some times, but not this situation. And I thought, how the hell would you improve on this situation? You took two people, put them in the water, completely intact, unscratched, with time for the raft, with time for what we needed. Come on. That's about as good as it gets. You don't flight plan a chute. The problem, of course, if you pull a chute the second time, it's a little bit like a second divorce. People look at you and say, maybe this is you. I would be very reluctant to try that again, to do it again, which is a shame, because if I were in the same boat, that is the right thing to do. It was that time, and I think it would be again. When I got a Cirrus, I thought, oh, it's great, it has a chute, And then the OB doctor, Guy Bladeau, who told me, you should get a Cirrus, don't get a Piper, because this thing has a ballistic. And I thought, okay, I'll get that. What did I know? Well, about 5 years later, I did know. And 7 or 8 years later, here I needed it. Since the time of my wreck, up until then, the wreck that we had came after a series of 8 or 10, I think 3 in one day, miserable crashes of Cirruses. It was really a disheartening time. Suddenly, and the Coast Guard, God bless them, got beautiful pictures, and then here we are, in the newspapers. They didn't die. She's a pretty girl. She showed well in the pictures. And it looks like this is a good outcome. And starting, if you count that as number one, since that time, there have been 12 fatals and 12 chute pulls. Up until that time, it had been, 5 or 6 to 1. Most chute pulls are going to be like most accidents. 85% of them are going to follow something dumb, flying into weather, flying into more than you can fly, flying badly. And so it's going to be an accident. And you're going to have a guy at the end of this accident. And the one thing that you're going to have that you wouldn't have otherwise is a living pilot. And two things are necessary for all of us as a family of aviators. One is to respect the idea that that guy is injured, has injured himself emotionally, and feels bad about things. Did not intend to destroy his airplane, to cause an insurance claim, to risk his life and others. Did not put himself in that position, just like everybody who stalls and spins into a house somewhere. God bless that poor guy. It happens. And I understand that at the end of that, many chute pullers are going to look like maybe they could have flown it, maybe they didn't have to do what they had to do. They were in that spot. They were in the position where they were looking for the Latin long, and they could not find it in a front page center. And it is astonishing to me how stupid I was. Embarrassing, but important to stress, because I'm a regular guy. I fly lots. I fly 300 or 400 hours every year. I'm proficient. I'm ready. I wasn't very good that day. So I'm fearful that other people in that crisis mode will have that same problem too. I want them to remember they have a chute if they do. Mm-hmm. And I want the people who read about it the next day to say, well, he might be an idiot, but he's not dead. And I'm thankful for that.
It's a decision you can live with.
It is a decision you can live with.